Hey everybody! So last week in writing, we started writing our very own personal narrative story, and we brainstormed using the web where we thought of different things that we wanted to include in our story. And then we drafted our story over a few days where we actually took our ideas that we thought of for the story and put them into sentences into our story. Today, we're going to move on to the next part of the writing process, which is called revising, okay? So when you revise, you read your story and think about, does it make sense? Does it sound good? Is there something that I can do to make it better? So we're going to be looking to add or take out parts of our story today. Now, at the beginning of first grade, my rule is that you just have to find one thing that you can add or take out, okay? In my story, I purposely made it to where there are several things that we can add or take out just so I can give you a good example of what revising looks like. But when you go to revise your story, you just have to find one thing that you can add to make it better or one thing that you can take out to make your story make more sense and to make it better. Okay, so this is our first time revising. I'm going to kind of show you what it looks like, and then you're going to try it on your own. And I know it may be kind of tough at first, but you'll get really good at it as the year goes on. Okay, so let's look at my story. All right, first thing when I revise, I read my story back to myself. Good authors always reread their story because a lot of times when you write your story, and I know I've done this lots of times, when I'm writing my story, I'll be writing and then maybe I get distracted and I get back to writing and I write the same word twice or I write the same thing twice. I would never know that if I didn't go back and reread the story to myself. So good authors always go back and reread their work. So that's what I'm going to start by doing today. I had the most amazing experience in Colorado on vacation. I got to feed real chipmunks. We had to hike to the very top of a mountain. When we got to the top, there were little chipmunks running everywhere. We brought sunflower seeds to feed to the chipmunks. I found a big rock to sit on. I sat as still as I could with sunflower seeds in my hand. A tiny little chipmunk ran up and started to eat from my hand. Feeding the chipmunks was so much fun. Okay, so that's the end of my story. Now, did my story make sense? Were there any parts that did not make sense? My story made sense, okay? So when I revise, I'm actually not going to have to take out anything because it all made sense and there weren't like any places where I wrote the same word twice or anything like that. So when I revise today, I'm actually going to look to add in something. When you add something to your story to make it better, a lot of times you may be adding like a color word or a different adjective that helps describe something better. So like how something felt, how it tasted, what it looked like. Those are different things that I could add to make it better. So I'm going to go back and look and see where I could add to my story. Remember, that's called revise. So let me say this before I go back to revise. There are some parts in here that you may have noticed I spelled wrong or I needed a period somewhere or something like that. We're going to worry about those tomorrow because that is the step where we edit. When you edit, you go and look for things that are spelled incorrectly, capital letters, periods, things like that. So that's editing. I'm not worried about that today. Today I'm worried about adding a word or taking out a word. So let's see where I could add something. When we revise, I like to revise where you guys like have either a crayon that you're writing in or a colored pencil. Instead of just revising with your pencil, I like to use colors because it helps me to go back and see, oh look, that's where you revised. If you just use your pencil to revise, sometimes I can't tell that you did anything because kids will just like erase and write their new thing, and I can't really tell that you actually did the work of revising. So when you revise, either use a crayon or colored pencil to write what you're doing, and I'll show you what I mean. I'm using a marker because this is already in marker and it's easier to see on video. All right, so looking to add something to make my story better. I had the most amazing experience in Colorado on vacation. I got to feed real chipmunks. We had to hike to the very top of a mountain. You know what? I could add in a word to describe the mountain more. Maybe I could add in the word tall. We had to hike to the very top of a tall mountain. That sounds good. And that helps the reader, the person reading my story, to actually get a better picture of the mountain and know it wasn't just like this really short mountain, it was really tall. Or I could use a word like steep. We had to hike to the very top of a steep mountain. And I'm going to go with tall. Okay, so when I need to add in a word to my story, I'm going to do this little arrow looking thing. It's called a caret. Do you see that? You do that where you want to add a word, and I want to add the word tall in between a and mountain. So I do my little caret, and then I write the word that I'm adding in. Okay? We had to hike to the very top of a tall mountain. So I have revised because I found something to add to make my story better. That's all you have to do today. You have to just find one way to make your story better. If you wrote the word the 2 times and it doesn't make sense, like if I had written, we had to hike to the very top of a mountain, I could take out the word the by drawing a line through it, and that would be revising because I'm taking something out. But like I said, I didn't have anything that I needed to take out because it all made sense. So I'm just adding to it to make it better. And I've added the word tall to help describe the mountain. I could stop here, but I'm going to keep showing you a few things I can revise just so you keep getting ideas of ways that you can revise. But remember, today you just have to revise one thing. Find one thing to add or take out. Okay, so let's keep reading my story and seeing if there's anything else I could add. When we got to the top, there were little chipmunks running everywhere. We brought sunflower seeds to feed the chipmunks. I found a big rock to sit on. Okay, let's see. Maybe I could tell what color the rock was. I could add in a color word. I found a big, how about before I say rock, I add in the word gray. So remember, my little caret, that little arrow means I'm adding a word before this word here. I'm going to add the word gray. So now the sentence will read, I found a big gray rock to sit on. Okay, so I have revised. Let's see if there's anything else I could revise here to make the story sound better. When you revise, you're really trying to make sure that the person reading your story is getting a really good picture in their head of what you're trying to tell them in your story. So adding words like gray or tall help your reader to really help make a picture in their head of what happened as you tell your story. I sat as still as I could with sunflower seeds in my hand. A tiny little chipmunk ran up and started to eat from my hand. Oh, you know what? I think I'm going to actually take out the word eat and add a word in its place because I thought of a better word that I actually want to use. So remember, when you revise and you want to take out something, you just draw a line through it. And then since I'm adding a word in its place, I'm going to put a caret. And instead of eat, I'm going to say nibble. So it will say now, a tiny little chipmunk ran up and started to nibble from my hand. I think that sounds better than eat because it really was nibbling. It wasn't like chomping it all down really fast. Notice also when I revise, I always go back and read the sentence again after I've revised to make sure that it still makes sense with my revisions. When I revise and I take out a word, the new word, if I add in a new word, takes its place. Or when I add in words, I need to read my sentence with those words added in. Feeding the chipmunks was so much fun. Okay, so I have revised my story. I found ways that I could take out a word and add something in its place. And sometimes you just take out words and don't add anything because it sounds better that way. It's up to you on how you do that. I found a color word that I could add in. And I found a word to tell what it looked like that I could add in, like tall. So today I want you to read your story again to yourself. See if it makes sense. If there's something that doesn't make sense, use that line to take it out and see if that will help it to make more sense. And remember, after you have read your story, you need to find one thing, only one. You could do more than one like I did, but just one thing that you could add to it to make it better, or one thing that you could take out to make your story better. Sometimes it may just be one word that you need to take out or add, or sometimes it may need to be a whole sentence. It's up to you. And I know this is the first time we're doing this, so it may be a little tricky, but we can't get better if we don't practice. So find one thing to add or take out, and then take a picture and show me what you did. And remember to use a different color, because it really stands out and helps me to see what I revised when it's in a different color. Okay? So today we are revising.